Well. Good afternoon, everybody. We're back. Here you are on the Justice Cast. I'm your host, Vernon Jones Jr., and proud to be here with my team from FaithBridge, the guy behind the camera, producing us, making us look good, sound good. Mr. Caleb, thank him for being here, and my sidekick, who's the man behind the curtain. We call him the Wizard of Oz. It's IL over there keeping it down. And to shout out to our research and data team, they do a good job of keeping us ready, prepared, and informed. Appreciate them. Shout out to y'all. They make me look smarter than I am, and I appreciate them doing that. Today's podcast, Justice Cast, is sponsored by High Chew. You know, you gotta have a good High Chew before you start the Justice Cast. And so today we got a good High Chew. And so thank you guys for being here with us. We're diving into more data. We're going to get right back into it because yesterday we talked about the CMAS data. There's an article. Our friends at Chalk Beach should love us because we promote them. We had a great article that came out yesterday. It's going to frame some of the conversation today. And it was some of the stuff we talked about yesterday, but this will definitely help to frame what we're talking about. But Chalk Beach pulled up an article yesterday talking about the CMAS and its correlation with the superintendent of Denver Public Schools and goals that he had set for the district on his strategic roadmap. Mr. Producer, do you have that for us today? Um, Folks, you can see that, what's going on here. Again, High Chew. What's your favorite High Chew? Mango. Mango is your favorite?
Yeah, or the green apple.
Or the green apple? I got strawberry right now, so strawberry. Not too bad. Yeah. So again, the Wizard of Oz. It's AL over there behind the curtain. Glad he's here with us. But again, Chalkbeat did an article about the superintendent yesterday that talked about just was making some connections between what the superintendent had set as his goals in the strategic plan versus the outcomes that we are seeing in the 2026 um, CMAS results, right? So what I want us to understand is this, right? So timeline. Let's first understand the timeline. Dr. Marrero hired in 2021. At the time, I know when he was hired. I was there the day he was announced at South High School. Shout out to the South Ravens again. But I was there the day he was hired. I believe it was May 2021. We were there. He was announced. I was there at the time. I was serving as a executive director of an innovation zone within the district. Went in to support this announcement, to support the district that we've worked with, and from that, if you recall history, I believe wasn't too soon after that Marrero started what was called a listening tour, where he went around the district gathering inputs from staff, from parents, from students, from constituents, from a lot of different folks to shape his first, what was called the strategic roadmap, right? And within the strategic roadmap that was supposed to cover 2022 through 2026, um, what Marrero did was set a 10 percentage point gain goal, right? And so we're talking about proficiency gain, right? So it wasn't just growth. It was talking about gain goal, that we were going to see at least 10% gain in proficiency. It was talking about increasing grade level achievement and accelerated growth for student groups, right? So this was something that jumped out. You can look at there's some stuff on great stuff on Colorado Public Radio if you want to look back onto that. They got some good stuff there. But just to give us some framing, so 2021, he's announced 2020, 2021, late 2021, he begins to do this road show, get information from people. Then in 2022, begins to talk about this strategic roadmap, right? So these goals are set. These ambitious goals are set, and let me not even say ambitious, right? These goals are set because I think when you saw the gaps that existed, when you saw the proficiency gaps that existed, when you saw the growth that was not there, I think you know it was in a state of we need to do things differently quickly, right? And so we get to this point that um, we've got this going. And so I hear folks saying, here we are, 2026, and we're seeing, as the Chalkbeat article said, we're seeing data that affirms that the goals that were set in the 2026 or 2022 strategic plan, we've not achieved those things in 2026. Is that the article there? Okay, great, thank you. Look, so the article's up there. If you look at the article, go to the headline really quick. Go back to the headline. The headline is you see Denver's test scores are up, but not high enough to meet all of the superintendent's strategic plan's goals, right? So the test scores are up, but not high enough to meet Again, that high enough that we're talking about is that 10 percentage point gain that was talked about by 2026. They always get him. They always get him when he's frowning, right? Look at that. They always get the frown face. I mean, he should smile more, right? But maybe not. Maybe not when you don't see what you want to see. But Caleb, if you just go down that article there for a little bit. So if you look at some of the initial stuff there, she's like, Denver Public Schools standard test score has gone up, yada yada yada. 2022, a year into its tenure, this is what I said. They released the first ever strategic plan. Among the plan's academic goals to increase the number of students scoring at grade level on math and literacy tests by 10 percentage points by 2026. Okay, so there's the line we're talking about. Okay, so now let me tell you the thing that we talk about. My team here gets sick about it, right? We set an X, and we set a Y, and we want to what? X to Y by Z. Say it again. It's what do we do? What do we do?
We do an X to Y by C.
They hate it. X to Y by Z. It's called the algebra of impact, right? So it's an X to Y by Z, right? So it's current state to desired state by a certain time, right? And so you set those things. So X is where we are, Y is where we're going to go, Z is by when we want to get there. And so all of that sets a formula for you that creates your priorities and your pace, right? Here's what we need to do to get to where we want to go, and here's the pace we want to get there at, right? So what Marrero was doing and what the district was doing was here's our X, right? So they're saying, hey, here's our X. Our Y is to be 10 percentage points better by Z, and that Z was 2026, right? So what should have happened by the superintendent, by the board, by everybody was like, okay, if we want to go 10 percentage points by 2026, here's what our pace needs to be. Here's what our pace of growth and gain needs to be from 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026. These are all the numbers that we need to, this is the pace we need to keep, right? And the moment that we are off pace, the moment we get some data point that says we're off pace, we don't keep doing the same thing. We have to adjust for the new pace that we have to get. So if you get to the end of 22 and you see that you are off pace, then you're behind pace, then you have to adjust and say, okay, well, how do we pick up the pace so that we achieve our 2026 objective? Remember, your X to Y by Z. You've already set that. You can't keep moving the goalposts, right? Like Itzael does in soccer when he gets tired, he moves the goalposts because, he can't run the whole field, right? You can't do that, right? You set a goal, you've got to stick with that goal, and you can adjust strategies, which you should if you're behind pace. If you're on pace, maintain. If you're ahead of pace, great. Nothing wrong with being ahead of pace, right? But if you are off pace, if you're off pace, you got to adjust. Is that right? Is that correct? Yeah. If you're off pace, you got to adjust. So this is what we're saying. I don't want anybody to be shocked by what we're seeing in 2026. Now, again, we said this yesterday. We have seen in DPS data that growth has been consistently stronger than achievement, right? So meaning that folks are growing, but they are not gaining achievement. We've seen that. That's a consistent thing. We hear the district celebrate growth. We hear the state celebrate growth. I mean, you look at the state's SPF and how much is weighted for growth versus achievement, right? So we celebrate growth. But again, what we committed to in 2022 was that we were going to have a 10% gain in student achievement, student proficiency, right? And so again, I don't want us to be shocked by what we're seeing in 2026 because in 2022, our performance score was 51.7% in 2023, 53.9% in 2024, 53.4%, right? So we're 3 years into the roadmap, and the district has barely moved. And from a state level, we stayed on an improvement plan. Okay. So again, here we are 2022, 2023, 2024. Now remember, the target, your X to Y by Z, was set in 2022 to get to your Z by 2026. And what we were discovering is that in 2022, 2023, 2024, we were not on pace to achieve our 2026 objectives. Is that right? We were not on pace. So then you have to ask yourself, okay, what did we do? Right? What did we do? Right? And there's some things that were done. I think what we find out, again, well, look, I take a deep breath here. I take a deep breath because there's a lot that happened. But let me just say, we knew in 2024 that we were not going to hit our 2026 objectives. We knew that. Okay. And there's a lot that took place that we're going to get into. It's what do you thinking? What are you thinking behind the curtain, oh Wizard of Oz? What are you processing right now? Am I crazy?
Not really. It's
Oh,
a
I'm
lot
not
of
really. I'm not really crazy. Not really.
no.
But
It's a lot of the data to see the way the data is compiled and to see that it did not hit those metrics that Marrero initially had.
it's if you're off pace on your work, do you hear from me?
All the time.
if you're off pace, I'm saying, bro, this is not going to deliver what we need to deliver, right?
Yeah.
So we either need to, we can't change the goal. The goal is what it's got to be. Get to where we need to get to by when we need to get there. But the strategies that we are implementing, evidently, they're not working to move us as fast as we need to get there, right?
Yeah, there has to be adjustment there.
Yeah, there's got to be adjustment. Great. Thank you, Itzayo. Thank you, O Wizard of Oz. I will tell you this. I used to, again, most of you know, I've worked in K-12 education. I will say I was working at a high school, one of the best high school experiences, the place where it got me going in my leadership journey in education, Manual High School. And at the time, Manual High School, those of you who know the story, they were going through so much, had gone through a lot of tumultuous time. There was a year that the place was shut down. We helped to reopen the place, and we began to lead in that place. And we had set some aggressive targets. Let me give you just a personal example how I know this works. We had set some aggressive targets, right? And so we get the same state test back at that time, and when we would put this data into a tracker that we had that was saying, okay, we had set this target by this time, and then we looked at the pace and we understood that with this pace of growth and this pace of gain, it was going to take us a longer than we had planned to get there, right? And I remember we were going to get our innovation status renewed by the district, and this is about maybe 2010, 2012, around that range. And so one of the things we talked about with the district is said, hey, currently where we are, there's no way that in this window we're going to be able to achieve what we needed to achieve because of these factors, whatever. These strategies that we are employing, these things that we are doing, in the window that you gave us, there's no way that we can achieve this because of the challenges that are there, right? So we were quick to talk about that. We were quick to be clear about, hey, this is where we're at. Here's where we think we need to make a strategy shift and all these different kind of things. But we knew, because we were monitoring it, that we were not on pace. We were not at the place we needed to be. When you had young people coming in to ninth grade and the third or fourth grade level, and you're trying to get them to be ready, right? You're saying, okay, if we do this, great. But then you look at the pace, you say, 4 years, we don't have, anyways. So we've been there, right? So I understand what the district was doing, but what I don't understand is how in 2022, 51%, 2023, 53%, 2024, a little dip at 53.4%. What I don't understand is how we saw this coming and folks are acting shocked, right? So if you looked at by fall of 2024, there was no longer like an information problem, right? The state framework remained at where it was. The district UIP, said achievement was not increasing quickly enough. The district UIP, the Unified Improvement Plan that the district submitted, told us that the district was not increasing quickly enough, right? The superintendent evaluation raised concern about academic improvement, and even the DAC, the District Accountability Committee, was identifying weaknesses in alignment and root cause analysis. This is all in the fall of 2024. Okay, so we hear all of these folks, all of these tools, all of these kind of like bells going off. Hey, achievement not quickly enough. Hey, the evaluation raising concern about academic improvement. Hey, the district accountability committee saying, hey, there's some weakness in alignment and in root cause analysis, right? And then Dr. Marrero's 2024-25 evaluation reinforced this accountability concern. It said, I think they graded him 73.5 points out of 100 possible points, and when it comes to achieving the board's end goal measures, and then their evaluation at the time explains the reasonable progress could be awarded when the underlying data improved, even though the goal was not met. Right? So hear this: you're off pace. You're not achieving the thing that you need to be achieved, but the board at the time awarded reasonable progress when the data was there that says this thing is not going to be achieved. The board noted that this was, and then this is what I love right here. In the third year of a 4-year plan, the board moves the goalposts. Okay. In the fourth year, Itzael, of a 4-year plan, right? He set the strategic plan, 2022. Here we are, 2022, 2023, 2024, right? You're pretty much in there, right? You're committed, right? I got some comments on that. What are they talking to me? What are they saying to me, right? Yeah, and so yeah, this is where we're at. This is where we're looking at. It's like, what was the board doing when we talk about the superintendent's evaluation in 2024, right? So what the board noted was that this was a transitional year in which it and Marrero had revised the reasonable interpretations and monitoring process, right? This is a huge question because the superintendent receives credit for year-over-year improvement while the district remains off trajectory for the long-term goal. And the evaluation means direction better than velocity. This question, this question they kept asking, did we improve? They should be saying, did we improve enough to reach the goal? Right? It was like, this is the problem. It's like, did we improve? Okay, we see some growth, right? But there was a target that was set in 2022. And so you have to evaluate against achieving that target, X to Y by Z. You have to evaluate based on achieving that target. And when you look at the pace at which we were improving, the answer to the question of did we improve enough to reach the goal on time is no, we were not. And so then you look at, okay, this is just like we've been saying in our compact. Okay, you got a governance responsibility, you've got a leadership responsibility, right? And so in this scenario, the governance responsibility was to say, hey, we are off pace. We are not going to achieve what we said we're going to achieve, and we can't excuse it. We can't give you a pass. We are off. And so the evaluation should have read clearly that we were off. Right? Those of us who've worked in this district and those of us who were evaluated, those of us who got feedback when we were leading schools, there was very little wiggle room, right? I was just at the house of one of my former instructional superintendents and having a conversation about this and remembering some things that she said. We had the best of intentions. We were doing great things, but what we were doing was not moving the needle fast enough. And back in the day, you were held accountable for not moving fast enough. And so what happened here was the superintendent, not to his fault, the superintendent was given credit for reasonable progress, even though that reasonable progress was not on pace to achieve the objective that was set in the strategic plan, right? Everybody get that? So the board was monitoring, And I think what the question was is not about it was the board paying attention, they were monitoring it. I think the question is, were they effectively managing trajectory, right? Were they effectively looking at the pace that was necessary for the district to achieve the goals of the strategic plan that was set in 2022, right? And again, that was to improve grade level achievement proficiency by 10 percentage points, right? This was through the READ Act, this was through CMAS, and this was through the COSAT, the SAT, right? And so this is something that you can read on the DPS website. You can read it's everywhere that this thing was put out there, right? And so, yeah, deep breath. Just a lot, right? Just deep breath there. So the issue again that we are looking at is we set great, I would say not great, we set a target, understanding our X. We said we want to get to Y. We want to be at a 10% increase by 2026. Okay. Within that X to Y by Z, there's the word to, and we call those an organization strategy. So the superintendent, his team created the two strategies to move from X to Y, right? By Z, right? Those strategies were being implemented, those strategies were being done, those strategies were being monitored. But again, here's the thing I want to stress again. While those things were being done, while those things were being monitored, what was not being asked was, are the things that we're doing moving us at the trajectory to achieve the outcome goal of 10% gain by 2026? And we can see by current data that it was not, right? And so you ask yourself, okay, then who's accountable for that, right? Is this a monitoring issue? Is this a strategy issue? Is it all the same? Is it everybody? Is this a management of trajectory issue? What is this? What is this? What is this? It is a how do I say this? I think it is an unacceptable reality. Let me say it that way. It is an unacceptable reality that when we set targets and those targets are connected to the lives of young people, it is an unacceptable reality that we are not monitoring the pace at which we are moving. Is that fair? Because if I have a sixth grader and I am to get that sixth grader who maybe came into my middle school, and this is pretty common, who came into my middle school below grade level, and if I am to get that sixth grader to grade level proficiency by the time they leave my middle school, how long do I have, Isaiah? How long do I have a sixth grader in my middle school? Exactly 3 years, right? So then, based on the data that I have, the X information that I have about that student, and the Y that says by the time they matriculate from my 8th grade class, right, and they go on to 9th grade, they are going to be grade level proficient. Then I have to say, I have 3 years to get this student grade level proficient. And so all of my strategies need to be at that pace to get that scholar to grade level proficiency. And if I'm doing anything at a slower pace, then I'm not serving that student well. And I don't understand how, and this is again speaking from my own professional experience, I don't understand how you get a great evaluation or a good evaluation from those who are monitoring you, measuring you, if you're off pace, right? Now, again, if there's extenuating circumstances that threw us off pace, if there's, I get that. If there's grace for a tragedy, grace for whatever, right? But I also think that has to be articulated, because then once you give grace for that, right? So let's go back again. Let's go back to the data again. If you're in 2022, 51%, 2023, 53%, 2024, 53.4%, right? So let's go back and say 2021, 51.7%, right? You're still saying, hey, we're just bouncing back from, we're still dealing with the COVID. Hey, at the COVID impacts, we're still dealing with this. We're boom, 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 right? So, okay, you give a little grace. Like you're saying, okay, hey, you got us through that. We appreciate that. We recognize the extenuating circumstances, right? But then you get into the next place, and you say, okay, in 2023, yes, we gave grace in that year, but then you got to adjust, right? You don't get to continue to say, well, let's we're just going to be off. We're just not going to hit it. No, there has to be strategic adjustment that happens to say, okay, we know we had a rough 2022. We know these were the factors that maybe slowed us down. We know these were the things that were in the way. So 2023 work's got to look a little bit different. We got to adjust strategy just a little bit different. We gotta move differently, because of the fact that, we have to we have to adjust, right? So again, like we said, Marrero was given a point for reasonable progress, but that reasonable progress was not a reasonable pace. Okay, there we go. He was given points for reasonable progress, but it was not the pace for us to achieve the 2026 objectives. And so, if we're going to just give credit for reasonable progress, then you'll never hit any objective that you set, because most folks are making some kind of progress. We looked at the data yesterday, and there's progress, but the progress that we're seeing is not, it's not on pace. I mean, you look at. Let me hop back into this data from yesterday. Thank you again to our data team who shared this. If I look at a school, I won't have to say this, but if I look at a school that's, you know, say their objective is by the end of 2026, or their 2028, their objective is to have 50%, right? So I'm looking at the school, for example, in District 2, ELA is 19.5 and math is 19%, right? In ELA, that was 2024, 2025. 25, 26, this school in ELA, they went up about 5%, right? So, 5% maybe is that the pace at which they need to continue to grow? They need to evaluate that. They say, okay, well, if they hit their pace goal, which is, if you're at 29, I mean, if you're at 19 and in 5 years you want to get to 40, so 40 divided by that, you're probably looking at a goal of about 6-7%, right? So they gained 5% in this year, right? So that's 2% off pace. So then they should be adjusting their strategy to say, okay, we did 5%. That's great. But our strategy said that we need to be at 7% per year. So we need to now adjust that says, okay, we got to pick up that 2%, right? So in the next year, we have to have strategies to say, instead of gaining the 7 that we had planned to gain, we now have to gain 9 this year, right? And then we can go 7, 7, 7, right? So this is the point, is when we saw in 2024, or the fall of 2024, that the district UIP said we're not increasing quickly enough, and the superintendent evaluation raised the same concerns, and the DAC was identifying the weaknesses in alignment and root cause analysis. What did we do, right? And so the board, again, was monitoring, and the board's own calendar explicitly, monitored the roadmap. They talked about this, and the biggest gap appears to be in the strategy evaluation. DPS has had all of these different things. They've had the MIS, the DDI, the data mines, the UIPs, the board monitoring. They had DACs. We've got CSCs at schools and other structures that are constantly supposed to be looking at how are we doing, right? The critical question, though, is when we are looking at the data, are we all asking ourselves, is this thing working well enough to produce the outcome by the time we need it, right? It's not simply did we implement, and it's not simply did the outcome improve, right? It's not simply did the outcome improve. It's like, hey, did the outcome that we achieve, does it reflect the pace that we need to get to the place we want to go? Later in the UIP, um, in the UIP, the Unified Improvement Plan, again, the district raised a major continuous improvement question. If data-driven instruction and intervention were central improvement strategies, but DPS later identified as ineffective data-driven instruction and intervention systems as a root cause, right? So I remember, and a person who no longer works for the district, I remember that as she was leaving to go to another place, to go work in another city, some of the comments that she made on her way out was, hey, that DDI, the data driven instruction, she said, I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing us do that well, right? The intervention systems as a root cause. She's like, I'm not seeing us do that well, right? So what we should be doing when we're evaluating is that the system should explicitly determine whether the strategies have been poorly implemented or whether a well implemented strategy was ineffective. That's what we should be doing. Like if we don't hit the pace of gain that we need to achieve to get to the place where we need to get to, we need to be saying to ourselves, was the strategy poorly implemented or was a well implemented strategy not effective? And I know these conversations are had. I believe that these conversations are had. Um, I'm hoping that they're had. I know that as we said, we need the board members and everybody to be having these deeper conversations about like, hey, it's not there's always going to be an outcome, right? There's always going to be an outcome. The point is, does that outcome, is it at the pace that you need it to be to get to the ultimate outcome that you promised back in 22 when you launched the strategic roadmap? If we committed to a 10% gain, then why didn't we get a 10% gain? Oh man, behind the curtain. Maybe you have all the answers, right? Um, the story in DPS and you'll see it. Nobody's going to argue that there's been progress, right? But I think what we need to acknowledge is that we're not just talking about progress. We're talking about there has been insufficient acceleration toward the original destination that was identified in the strategic plan, right? In the strategic roadmap. That's what we're talking about. And that's what boards should have been talking about. At what rate were we supposed to be achieving so that by 2026, the thing that we said we were going to do, we actually do it, right? And what were the barriers? What were the things that were in the way of achieving at that level? What were the things that we needed to, and again, I'm talking about first from the governance standpoint. What were the things, how do we need to govern differently to ensure that any barriers that were in the way of achievement, that we were removing those barriers, right? And then from a leader perspective, what were the things that when we saw that we were off pace, what were the things related to um, culture and community that needed to be done to ensure that we got back on pace, right? And then as a school leader, as an educator in a school building, as we understand, hey, this pace that we need to be at to achieve this 2026 objective, what were the things that needed to be shifted, moved out of the way? What were the things outside of the box that we need to be doing to get back on pace, right? How do we need to do that from a practice standpoint, right? And then when you go broadly to families that are impacted and partners within our schools, what are the things that we could have been doing and should have been doing to ensure that we were all at the right pace to achieve this strategic objective that said we were going to see 10% gain for student groups? Those are the hard conversations we got to have. right? If we're going to set, if we're going to come out the gate and look, please set big goals, right? Set big goals because justice requires it. Set big goals to say, hey, we are going to eliminate uh, opportunity gaps. Set big goals to say we're gonna eliminate achievement gaps. But tell me when, by when you're gonna do that, and tell me by when, so I know how I need to operate in alignment with the pace that we need to be going at to achieve that thing by the time we said we would achieve that thing, right? Don't fall into the trap that's so often has trapped up this country when we say things like with all deliberate speed, right? What that means in this country is we will move as it is convenient for the people who are already comfortable. That's what it often means. We were going to move at all deliberate speed at a pace that is comfortable for the people that are already comfortable. And sadly, what that often means in education is that we are not moving at the speed of student need. We are moving at the pace that is comfortable for adults. We are moving as fast as adults want to go, not as fast as students need us to go. We are innovating. We are doing all these new things as it is comfortable to us, adults, not at the speed of student need. And you can see that because if we're moving at the speed of student need, we don't give ourselves a pass for things like, oh, it was a transitional year, so we don't have to be accountable for the pace anymore because it was a transitional year. Well, tell that to the third graders who can't read at grade level. Tell that to the fifth grader who's going to sixth grade and is still at the second grade later. Tell that to the ninth grader who's going into ninth grade at a fifth grade level that you took a transitional year, adults. How about we do that? Hey, young people, we're sorry, but as adults, we had a transitional year, and we're sorry that because we had a transitional year, you were going to suffer. Come on now. Yeah, I'm probably going to lose some friends today. It's or maybe they'll respect the fact that this is all said in love. This is also a challenge to me, a challenge to all of us that says, wait a second, bro, wait a second, wait. We set a goal, we set a target, we said by this time we will be here for children, and we need to evaluate ourselves and say, why aren't we there? Why didn't we do it? Why didn't we adjust when we saw the writing on the wall? Why didn't we make changes when we saw the writing on the wall? Oh, because we were distracted by adult antics. We were distracted by adult tantrums. We were distracted by a bunch of adults who supposedly can already read, already proficient. Right? Let me take a sip of my water. Maybe this is going to calm me down. You know what? I'm just going to start saying that. Hey, it's a transitional year. If it buys you time, if it buys you time. Again, please, I run organizations. I understand that things come up. I understand that you have to make adjustments, right? But I also understand this. Like, you make a commitment and you gotta adjust, but you gotta still understand we gotta make that transition. Let me give to you this. In a sports setting, and I know it's going to be painful. I'm a Bronco fan. Football season's getting ready to get going, right? But we're watching the Broncos last year, and everybody thinking, hey, we're going to the Super Bowl, right? And the Broncos are playing, and we're playing the Buffalo Bills. We beat the Buffalo Bills, man, and we're like, oh man, we're going to the AFC Championship. We know it. We're going to play the New England Patriots, and we were all excited. We were all excited, right? And we found out that Bo Nix was hurt, right? Couldn't play. Right now, we just but you still got to get out there against New England Patriots, and yeah, I know it's painful. We didn't win the game, but you don't get to say, well, Bo Nix is hurt, so we can't play football anymore. Sorry, there's a challenge. We can't play football anymore. Hey, no, the goal changes. We no longer want to win the Super Bowl anymore. No, you don't say that. As an organization, you don't say that. You say, guess what? There was some adversity. There was a challenge. There was an unexpected hit. And we are adjusting our strategy, but we cannot adjust our goal. You cannot move the goalposts. Even though Bo Nix was hurt, you had to put your backup in, And the goal for the organization still remained, we need to win the Super Bowl. And you were disappointed because you didn't win the Super Bowl because why? The goal still didn't change. Now, folks can argue in that scenario. Was it the best strategy? Did you right? You get to go through all of that kind of stuff. But guess what? The goal does not change just because the circumstances and the situations we are faced with changes. You got to adjust your strategy when you see in 2022, 2023, 2024 that you are not on pace to achieve a 2026 objective. You've got to adjust your strategy, and in our view, you have to adjust your strategy, not just internally, but you need to adjust your strategy externally with families, with the beloved community, and then, of course, with the governance and with leadership. Those things, you don't just get to throw the red flag of it's a transitional year. So, guys, sorry, we're just going to not achieve what we needed to achieve. You still got to go out and the goal is still to win the Super Bowl. Go play the game, right? Go play the game. Put your team in a position to win, right? In that football analogy, some of us will say, "Hey, Sean Payton didn't put his team in a position to win." And so, the board characterized 2024-25 as a transitional year because it said, "Hey, we were recalibrating the strategic roadmap, the board ends, reasonable interpretations, and superintendent monitoring, right? All of that kind of stuff, right?" Again, we said, but this transition year happened in year 3 of the 4-year strategic roadmap, right? You didn't get a pause. You didn't get a pause on the strategic roadmap. There was still a 4-year commitment that you made to the community that said, hey, we are going to get here by this time. It's not like, the video game, you can pause it and come back, still be at the same level, right? You can't do that. You got to keep playing through because there are young people that are counting on you, right? DPS, we already had clear evidence that several academic outcomes were off trajectory. And you have to ask at this juncture, again, talking about governance, why was the board still recalibrating the system used to measure the superintendent against the three? Why was the board still recalibrating the system used to measure the superintendent against the strategic roadmap 3 years into the roadmap? Does that make sense, Itzel? Why are we still recalibrating the system to measure the superintendent when we are already 3 years into the strategic roadmap? It's a lot. It's the evaluation itself. The evaluation itself says its purpose is to evaluate Dr. Marrero's fidelity around board policy and not specific outcomes. Even though the same document says his contract requires evaluation based on the accomplishment of agreed upon goals and then assigns points based on outcomes. Sounds like some confusion there. What we're saying here today is that as we look at the data and we look at the timeline and we look at the fact that we were off pace, and we knew this in maybe fall 2024, we knew we were off pace. The root cause problem that I see and that we've done in our own analysis is that we need a cohesive measurement system. And everyone should know from the beginning exactly how the strategic plan outcomes, board in, superintendent evaluation, MIS, and progress monitoring all connect. Right? Everybody should know. Everybody should be in the loop about how all of this is connected. And that means the people who are governing, the people who are leading, the people who are doing practice every day, the families, and the beloved community. All of us should be in the loop, understanding how all of this works, how all of it is connected, right? And we need to have a cohesive measurement system and a cohesive system that communicates progress and pace, that communicates that, hey, here's what we need from every part of the ecosystem that is helping to educate young people. We need cohesive measurement. And You can't have, Dak looking at this and this looking at that, and you got 8 different people looking in 8 different directions, right? And so the only thing you got to do is talk to that room and convince that room that, and talk to that other room and convince that room of that. We need a cohesive measurement system, right? That looks at our strategic plan outcomes, board ends, the superintendent evaluation, the MIS, and progress monitoring, and it connects all of it, because we'll keep seeing results like this. We'll keep seeing, results like this where we're not making the progress at the pace that we need to make it. Now, I'm just gonna let me just throw this out there. It's like, maybe, if I go to a school right now, let's say I'm a third grader, and my third grade score at my school says that right now 15% of us are grade level proficient. And some people might say I'm simplifying things, but this is the facts, right? 15% in reading. I'm in third grade. So third grade, that was my third grade. So if that was my third grade result, that means I have 2 years left in that school, right? Balloons just went up. That's right, celebrating. 2 years left in that school. So in 2 years, there are 85% of kids in that school in reading who need us to work with them diligently so that we can say that 100% of our kids are going to leave this school on grade level. So that's 85% of kids. That means in my fourth grade year, we should see that number go from 15% to 57.5%. Huge jump, right? And my fifth grade year, when we're tested, we should see that number go from the 57.5 to the 42.5, right? And everybody says, oh my God, those numbers are too big. Those numbers are too big. Hey, guess what? That's what you're dealing with, right? And that's the whole point, that if the numbers are what they are, you set your goal, you set your target that 100% of kids, by the time they leave this school that is currently at 15% proficiency in reading, if the goal is that these third graders, and you only got 2 years left with them, so you got to say, okay, in 2 years, we got 85% of kids to get them there, right? So you got to work differently. You got to have different strategies because you only got 2 years. You don't get to just kick that thing on to the middle school and say, well, I hope I get them. I hope they get them caught up. And if you're the middle school, you never catch those kids up in middle school, you kick them onto the high school and you say, well, I hope those high school people catch them up. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It never happens. Because we are not adjusting to pace, and we're not adjusting our practices to the fact that, hey, it's got to look different. It's got to look different now look, you go to another school, bro. I'm telling you, like this is the hard work of education. I remember being a leader. I remember sitting and looking at this data. I remember literally crying with my staff, looking at data and saying, my goodness, we've got a mountain to climb. And we didn't back down. I give credit to everybody that I've ever worked with. We didn't back down. We said, hey, we got to think outside the box. Because it's not just about, hey, we finished this year. It's not about that. It's like, did we finish this year on pace for this student to leave here on grade level? And there was a lot of times we said no. And we had to come back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, how are we going to do things differently? How are we going to think outside the box? How are we going to create new partnerships? How are we going to connect with families? How are we going to do whatever we need to do to make sure that the thing that we promise is the thing that we delivered? I don't know. I don't know. I just sometimes feel like maybe folks don't have that same kind of sweat, that same kind of fight, or maybe they don't have it at just certain schools. Because at certain schools, there's a different bar. There's a different kind of sweat expected. There's a different kind of resourcing. There's a different whatever. It's just different. The support level is different. But bro, let me tell you, there's a lot of schools right now. There's a lot of schools. Again, I go back to my neighborhood, District 4. Go back to my neighborhood, and there's some spaces on there where, again, I told you guys yesterday that my heart breaks for some of the stuff that I'm seeing, right? My heart breaks that some of these spaces are struggling with the support. When I see a school that's at 6.5% in reading proficiency and 8% in math, I think I have a right to ask, what the hell is going on there? What the hell are we not doing? Don't give me, oh, we got this new Elevate network. We got, don't give me that, bro. Come on, because my community's been experimented on multiple times. I can tell you how many networks we've had. I can tell you how many zones we've had. I can tell you how many initiatives we've had. And I'm still looking at this same school at 6.5% in reading and 8% in math. What are we doing? Because that is not what our strategic roadmap said we were going to do. And even if you look at that, say 10%, say we did hit 10% in that place. Let's say that school was a school that we said, hey, we want to go up 10% there, right? That school didn't go up, that I'm just referencing. School didn't go up at all. It actually went down 1% in reading, language arts, and it stayed flat in math, right? So it didn't go up at all. And I know that school has many different things that are being tried there or have been tried there. And even if you did just go up 10% from where they were previously, you're talking about, okay, 17% and 17%. That's what there would be. Ladies and gentlemen, that still leaves 83% of kids not reading on grade level, not doing math at grade level. So we have to reset ourselves, and we have to reset our strategies. It's hard work. It's hard work. And so, my respect is for everybody who's in this work and doing the right work and doing it for the right things and are willing to lean in with community, willing to lean in with families, willing to lean in with other leaders, willing to lean in with whoever, because we know that children deserve better. They deserve to thrive by design and not by chance. And what we are seeing here is a reality that I just cannot, I cannot be okay with. I can celebrate. Like I said, we've seen growth. We've seen growth. I don't think anybody will argue that. We've seen growth. We've seen these things, right? But I think what we are concerned about is even the growth. Is it at the pace that we need to achieve our objectives? I mean, we look at the state accountability trend with us, and we say, we were an improvement plan in 2022, and 2023 an improvement plan, 2024 an improvement plan, and then in 2025 DPS became accredited, right? But we were flat, 2022 through 2024, flat. No real change, and right, and get it. This is again, first year, new leader, right? But again, that doesn't matter, right? If you join a winning team, they expect you to play ball, right? Caleb, you get on a winning football team where they win championships and they're doing well. They don't care that you're a rookie. You better get out there and play. You better get out there and do your thing, because the expectation here is that we win. And the expectation in Denver has to be, we do not fail students. And if you're going to lead, if you're going to govern, if you're going to practice, if you're going to be a family within the community of Denver, we got to say, hey, we don't fail students. And that means whatever it takes, we will do as an ecosystem. And we will not accept what we're seeing. We will not accept what we're seeing. I don't think the board lacked information. I don't think that at all. I think the board was paying attention. I do think that the board was paying attention. I think they were good at receiving data. I think okay at discussing it. I think it was, we saw board members who were great from this window that we're talking about from 2022 to now, who were good at identifying concerns. I think the thing that you hear me saying is that we struggled with triggering a thoughtful conversation about major strategy changes when the data showed that we were off trajectory. And I think the reason why we did not have those major strategy changing conversations is because we were not effectively measuring trajectory. We were giving points for reasonable progress when we should have been saying, is that the pace by which we need to be moving in order to achieve the outcome that was promised, right? I think that um, I think that this is not about are we improving, because I think people will say yes, we are improving. I think that the question of did we hit the targets? I think that you can say in some places yes, sometimes. And I think the thing that is in question that I keep bringing up here that is not answered anywhere is, are we improving fast enough to reach the roadmap goals? I don't know how often I've heard board members bring that up. I don't know how often that was a conversation. Maybe somebody can correct me and send me the meeting minute notes, because maybe we did talk about that. And it's not very clear that we've had pace conversations. It was not clear that I ever hear anybody, hey, Dr. Murrow, we got to pick up the pace. How are we going to do it? Right? What do you need? Right? How can we help? Right? If the Dr. Morrell came to you and said, "Hey, we are struggling here at School X, and I believe if we would do A, B, C at School X, we could pick up the pace here and we could actually achieve our 2026 objectives," right? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they happen privately in their two to ones or whatever conversations they have. But I just think publicly, even like, how often did we hear publicly the governing board or the superintendent come and say, "Hey, community, here's what we need. We believe in the 2026 outcomes. We believe that we can get there, but here is where we need help." Other than just the financial piece, right? But here's where we need help from families. Here's where we need help from the beloved community, because we're almost there, we think, but we're off pace. And if we stay off pace, we understand that that means that we are going to fail students. And I just don't know if that was the evaluation system. The evaluation system definitely measured direction better than it measured velocity, right? I think it definitely measured direction. Like, hey, we're growing. Like we're growing in the right direction, right? But it didn't measure the velocity. Like, are we gaining the academic proficiency um, that we needed to? I think again, what we need to look at is alignment of these evaluation systems. I think we need to look, how do we escalate when we know that we are off pace, and then how do we look at corrective intervention? I mean, at all places, and going back to all of these things that we've had. We got all of these inputs. We got all of these folks throwing up red flags and fall of 2024. We got all of these folks saying, hey, what should we be doing? Hey, what are we doing? Asking questions, right? We need to make sure that our CSCs in our schools, our collaborative school committees, where they are looking at school performance, that they are being able to equip to ask the right questions. They are being able to understand what's happening at the school level. They are being able to understand, hey, our school is off pace. How do we help? Right? Our school is gonna hinder the larger system from getting the goals that it needs to get. So we need to lean into those. We need to lean into those. We need to lean into those things. We need to lean into those partnerships. So this is, we've always talked about that. I mean, I believe that the DAC and other folks have talked about, this cannot be done in isolation, and that's our compact here. Is that it's got to be about governance. It's got to be about leadership. It's got to be about the practitioners. It's got to be about family, and it's got to be about the beloved community. You got to have all of those pieces moving together if we are going to make up ground that has been lost and get students to the objectives that we need to get them to. The superintendent, Dr. Marrero, is currently talking about our 2030 strategic roadmap, right? And I hope that as this new roadmap is written, as this new roadmap comes together, I think what we should be doing is to say, okay, um, how do we how do we move together to effectively ensure that we achieve what we want to set for the 2030 strategic roadmap, right? And I think, again, when we talk about recommendations, when we talk about the things that people are recommending, it's very important too that those recommendations come with the clarity that is necessary to understand. Hey, this is where we are going. This is where we want to go. Um, so that those recommendations are focused, right? That those recommendations are not just random, right? But folks understand, hey, this is where we're trying to get there. We understand what strategies are being attempted. We understand what things are being worked on, and then you give a recommendation to say, hey, um, how do we do that? I think, and I think we're getting wrap on this, but I think when you look at, like, I think it's the 2025, 2026 UIP identified, right? Ineffective systems supporting the data-driven instruction and interventions, ineffective systems supporting professional learning, right? This occurred in the final year of the 4-year strategic roadmap. You know, DPS acknowledged that the system supposed to turn data into better instruction were themselves not yet effective enough. Um, this explains more than the CMAS scores, right? The critical systems that we needed to deliver the strategic roadmap targets, the district itself said in the final year of the 4-year strategic roadmap that the systems supposed to turn data into better instruction were themselves not yet effective enough, right? So there we go. And the sad part is that fact, the system's supposed to turn data into better instruction were not themselves not yet effective enough. It's in the same places it has always not been effective enough. It is not all. It's not. We look at the struggles in Southwest Denver. These are not new. The struggles in Northeast Denver, my neighborhood where I showed you, these are not new, right? And let me just say, as I read that, I'm even more frustrated. Even more frustrated, right? Never not optimistic, but frustrated, right? Because I look at a school that's at 94% and 91%. Evidently, their systems were turning their data into better instruction. I look at a school that's 80% and 82%, and evidently their systems were turning things into better instruction and kids were benefiting. So I wonder if CSCs at those schools that are struggling, that's that school that's got a 6% and an 8%. I wonder if the CSCs were actually given timely, understandable information showing whether the school was on or off trajectory, and did they have meaningful path for escalating concerns? I wonder. Maybe DAC could answer that for me. Maybe I should ask the DAC leadership, since they're supposed to be coordinating with CSCs. I wonder if the DAC has even asked schools that have a 6% reading proficiency and an 8% math proficiency. I wonder if the District Accountability Committee has talked to that CSC, those parent leaders, and asked them, have you been given timely, understandable information showing whether your school is on trajectory? And if not, do you understand how, as a CSC, you can meaningfully elevate or escalate your concerns? I wonder. I know that I know that DAC has been working to strengthen its connections between CSCs and district level planning stuff. And look, again, I've been around here long enough to understand when that stuff was working, and I've been around long enough to understand and tell you who undid it and why it was undone. And why it was undone in the same places where we are struggling, but in the places that are strong, they dare not mess with those steel mamas. They dare not mess with those Polaris families. They dare not do that. But this chaos and destabilization in other places, this lack of communication, this lack of awareness in other places, it is systemically intentional. So, anyways, we don't lack committees, right? We don't lack committees. We do not lack eyes on things, right? We do not lack adults paying attention. I just think what we are lacking is just a sense of urgency that is required to get these things done by the time a kid walks across a stage for graduation, and that diploma should actually mean something. And let's even back up. Not even the diploma. A kid who is continuing from 5th grade onto middle school should be ready for middle school in all ways. A kid moving on from middle school to high school should be ready in all ways. You know, we keep uh, uh, I love this. I love this question I'm getting in my messaging. Well, if DPS got so many eyes on things, so many adults monitoring, how can DPS fall short? Well, I think the simple thing is that DPS, like most large systems, seem to have more monitoring than accountability escalation, right? The system here was good at setting goals. We collect data, we review data, we can identify problems, but I think, the weakness is that, the problems persist and strategy must materially change. We must assign accountability. We measure with whether change worked and escalate it again if it did not work. The final loop, I think, is much weaker, right? Escalate it again if it did not, right? Are we quickly, you know, we're not struggling. We're not failing kids because nobody's watching. Everybody's paying attention. I think we fall short because despite extensive monitoring, the deeper problem appears that our accountability systems were and are fragmented, and they lack strong intervention triggers, and the rate of improvement showed the strategic roadmap was when it showed the strategic roadmap was off track. Um, you know, so it's all of us, I guess. It's not one person at all. It's once everyone knew the district was off trajectory, guess what? What do? I asked it of myself. I asked it of a board. I asked it of a leader. I asked it of the folks who every day lead. When we saw that we were off track, and I remember as a school leader, I remember that being on team, what did we do when we were off track? One, we grappled with the fact that we were off track. And then we grappled together to say, okay, what are we going to do right now? We didn't wait till next year. Right? Our data cycles wouldn't allow us to wait till next year. I remember sitting in data rooms and some of my former staff, my former colleagues listen and they remember the moments we said. I remember sitting on the third floor of a hot manual high school with the team and instructional superintendents from Denver Public Schools coming in, and we are grappling, and our team is literally weeping. I mean, we were sitting there weeping because we knew that we were pouring our hearts into this thing. We were doing what we thought to be the right thing, and we had to say, okay, when we discovered that we were off trajectory, what did we have to do differently? Because we knew that those kids that were with us, we only had them 4 years in high school. And a lot of them, we only had them 1 year. We only had them 2 years because they were coming to us from other schools that had already pushed these kids out. And here we only had a year to recover whatever needed to be recovered. Here we only had 2 years to recover what needed to be recovered. And we turned no one away. And every, I kid you not, every student that came to us, no matter how difficult the mountain looked, I thank God for the people that I worked with there. They were willing to climb the mountain. They were willing to say, hey, these kids deserve adults who will do whatever needs to be done in the time that it needs to be done to get young people to where they need to be. And so, that's it's just we need to do a better job of tracking our strategies with our outcomes and being able to say, is that strategy working? I remember, and we'll remember, I'll close this. Caleb will laugh at this too. Remember, we come up with ideas here all the time, like at FaithBridge, and we're like, hey, let's try this. And some of you guys might, if you follow us, there's still some videos on here, but these young people, we start something called The Bridge, right? And it was, you're laughing about that. And it was going to be, the big idea was like, we are about to be the CNN of news, of education news, and young people are going to be doing it, and we're going to have our own newscast. I'm like, let's go, right? And then we started to find out, how easy it was, right? And we said, oh my God, that's not working, right? And we didn't keep doing that thing. We gave it a time. and I gave space for us to try it and to do it. And then we had to quickly say, okay, wait, that is not going to get us to where we need to get to. That is not our X to Y by Z. We tried it, and we have to be able to quickly, because we know we have limited time, we have limited opportunity. We've got to be able to quickly make adjustments because we know there are people counting on us. And it translates to every workplace, every school where we're at. That you got to be willing to just change up when you need to change up. Oh, wizard behind the curtain. Do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking about the bridge, and yeah, it made me think of how such a humbling experience that was. But we were able to recognize and um, make the change from what we thought was going to be such a great thing. We were able to talk about it, like sit with it, and ultimately make a decision that we thought was going to be best for the organization and the team.
Yeah, and you got to do that. I think the thing that we look at is we look at DPS to give credit to folks who worked for from 2022 to 2024. I mean, there was work being done. I know there was new efforts being put in there. There was changes in staffing structure, all these things being done 2022 to 2024, and I think in 2025 you could say from 2022 to 2025, there was like a 6% growth that moved DPS out of the improvement plan to accredited, right? And so something was happening there. But again, to our point, that something was happening was good. But what we understand is that something that was happening that was good was still not at pace to achieve the great that the superintendent had said we needed to achieve by the end of 2026. And that's the big point of this, is that if we're going to set targets, if we're going to set targets and objectives and goals, then we've got to be able to say, okay, we also got to put a pace with that thing. We also got to put a pace with that thing. And so, the district map, the district roadmap for 2026 to 2030 is coming out, and we're gonna look forward to that, to see what that looks like. Even I think as I'm looking at a document from the district, and I'm reading this here. It says the evidence suggests that the primary weakness was not an absence of monitoring; it was the absence of a single cohesive system connecting outcome trajectory to strategy effectiveness and requiring timely course correction when progress was insufficient. Right? That's what we talk about, right? That's what we're saying, and that's I'm glad that we're all on the same page, and that's what we need to do to get things. We need to get things better within Denver Public Schools, and that's this roadmap as it gets ready to get done, and to look for the 2030 objectives. I hope that we will be more focused on what we need to be doing. Tomorrow, we will have a special Justice Cast. It will be a Saturday version of the Justice Cast, and we will have scholars from Denver Public Schools and Aurora Public Schools will be on with us tomorrow afternoon on a Saturday version of the Justice Cast. You don't want to miss that. We want you to join us to hear from students. I heard that we had some people today asking us, hey, what are the things that students are concerned about, right? They want to read. They want to be able to do math. They want to be ready for success in middle school and in high school. They want to be ready for success in college, right? So let's not distract ourselves with, yeah, we know that they want opportunities. I work with them every day. Yes, they want internships. Yeah, they want all that kind of stuff. But guess what? To be successful in those things, we need to be delivering them the health and wellness that they need, the emotional wellness that they need, and we need to make sure that they're reading and that they're writing and that they are doing math at grade level, that they have the ability to critically think, that they have the ability, right, to connect in community. Those are the things that young people want, because if you give them that, the sky's the limit. They can do everything that they dream, and so that's what we got to focus on. Again, growth. DPS, definitely. We see all the awards that folks get, their growth that helps them go green because of how the state rates things. We see all that, but again, the point today is that if we set an X to Y by Z, we have to evaluate our movements on will we get there based on the pace that we are currently going. And if we say no, we have to adjust strategy to pick up the pace. We have to adjust strategy to shift our practices to get us back on a pace. There's a lot of things that we got. It's a constant cycle of improvement. I remember we talked about this all the time in education. It's a constant cycle of improvement. We are constantly evaluating where we're at. We're constantly evaluating where we need to be moving, and we're not afraid of putting in the sweat and the work that is necessary to help young people get to where they need to get to. So I have been Vernon Jones here on the Justice Cast with my partners in crime, our producer, Mr. Caleb Jones, and our man behind the curtain, the great Wizard of Oz, Itzel Garcia. Again, shout out to our data team. Shout out to our, for them, like I said, making us look smarter than we are and making sure that it sounds a little bit coherent, what we talk about on here. So join us again tomorrow on the Justice Cast when our co-hosts will be the fellows from Shift. Have a great afternoon.